But let's talk about transposing. And with transpose, I like to start simple. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this little bat head. And we'll click the big tool palette menu, and we'll go grab a cylinder, drag that out, go into edit mode, and make it a polymesh 3D. Turn on polyframe so you can kind of see what's going on. Now, we can navigate, and we can move, we can snap to our different areas. And I don't have perspective turned on because I'll talk about that when we get there. But I have perspective turned off. And I'm going to talk about transpose. So what transpose is we've been in edit mode and draw mode this entire time. We haven't gone, unless you've accidentally done it, or you've gone ahead, we haven't gone into move, scale, or rotate at all. So as soon as I hit W, that is actually kind of a modifier key because it spits us out into transpose mode. So here's our transpose brush, and by default that is the move transpose. If I hit E, that goes into scale transpose, R is rotate transpose. Has the same line, so you can actually go to move, scale, and rotate, and this doesn't change, but what it does changes. And we'll talk about that in just a second. That's if you hit W, E, or R, you'll get a transpose line. So what is a transpose line and what is it made of? And this is going to be the basics of transpose. Once we get into kind of hard edge detail modeling, there's going to be a few transpose tricks that we might get into, or I might go into them now. We'll see. So a transpose line is 3 outer circles with 3 inner circles. So as I hover over this outer circle, you're going to see I can grab this outer circle and move it. And then if I hover over the inside of that circle, there's actually an inner circle I can move. Now you're going to see when I move that inner circle, it actually moved the object. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. If I move the outer circle, it just moves the transpose line. So we can use that to our advantage in a number of ways. Another thing I did was actually just tap the surface of the object. And when you do that, it just finds the surface normal of the face underneath where you tapped it. Now remember what we were saying when we were talking about surface normals is like it's an invisible little string that pokes out straight out from every single face in ZBrush. This finds that. So when you just tap on a face, or actually a vertex in ZBrush, it'll find that surface, that vert normal, and just follow that straight out. So if you want to say move this object straight out from this surface right here, you can just tap on that surface and you're ready to just move. Well, I'm in rotate now, but you can hit move, and then if you drag this middle one, it'll just move it along there. And if you hold down shift, it'll actually constrain it to that line. No matter where my cursor is, it'll just move it straight up and down that line. If you don't hit shift, you can just move it around. Now, it kind of is a little bit weird because we don't have multiple objects. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and go into my subtool menu, go to append, and append a sphere. So there's a sphere right inside that object, and we're going to talk really quickly about transparency. So if I hit transparency mode, so here's transparency underneath the polyframe, you're going to see the object goes transparent, and there's another mode called ghost. And the biggest difference between transparency and ghost is if you want to sculpt through an object, make sure you have ghost on. If you want to just see an object, just have transparency on. But when we get to that part, we can talk about that later. But for now, we'll just turn on transparency. You can see there's a sphere right inside that cylinder. So let's say I want to move this cylinder up above this sphere. One way we can do that is we've talked about is go down to your deformation menu, and you can offset it. Instead of doing X, we'll do Y, and you can offset this up, and you can offset this down. Now, if you want to do very precise movements, you can certainly use that, because you can type in 0, 100, negative 100, whatever. And if we turn off polyframe, you're going to see it lines up pretty perfectly. So, use offset if it makes sense. If you just want to stay on the object, what you can do is use transpose. So you can hit W, that goes into move mode. And if you want to move it straight up, or at least straight from this top surface, which is, if you snap to the side, hold down shift as you rotate your camera, it'll snap to the side. This is a flat surface, so if you tap on that flat surface, it's going to shoot straight up from that vertex normal. And then if you hold down shift and grab this middle inside circle, you can move this thing up and down right along that axis. So you can move it up. I'm going to hold down shift, grab that inner circle, and move it up. So now this cylinder is above that sphere, and I turn transparent off. Cool, huh? So let's talk a little bit more. So I'm in move mode, hitting W, and we'll stay with move for a little while. If I tap the top of this object, and I hold down shift and grab this top one, what that's going to do is actually anchor it from this bottom point and move the entire. If I turn on polyframe, you're going to see that it's moving, but it's actually kind of a non-uniform scale. So I already know that's getting a little bit weird, especially for traditional 3D users, is that's kind of odd. It's like, well, if I want to scale non-uniformly, why wouldn't I use scale? You actually use move to do that. Because if I use scale, so let's go to scale here. If I use scale on any of these, the middle one, the bottom one, or the top one, it wants to do more of a, this is kind of an odd scale, and honestly, I don't ever use these. The only time I ever use scale is if I want to tap, and I want to use this as my anchor point, and I want to scale uniformly from my anchor point. That's the only time I ever use scale, is to do a scale uniform. If I want to do a non-uniform scale, I'm going to hit, and by non-uniform I mean it's, so here's the uniform scale, right? Everything scales up at once. Same thing as if we go down here to deformation, size, everything scales up at once. A non-uniform scale means I want to just scale in like the Y direction, which again is straight up and down. So the green, little green arrow here, or the green line is Y, Z forward, X symmetry. So I go move, and hold down shift and grab this top one. It'll anchor this bottom point and move the rest of it uniformly, or non-uniformly, but uniformly in the Y direction, and X and Z stay as alone. If I grab this bottom one, this one's a little bit different. It'll actually clip, and it's not getting rid of geometry. If you zoom way in here, you're actually going to see all of these edges are kind of being bunched up together. It's kind of an advanced type of thing I don't use a whole lot, but you know, it's there if you need it, and if it ever shows up, you know, if I ever need to use that later on when we're getting a little bit heavier into ZBrush, I'll bring that up again, because I don't know that it's all that relevant right now. But for basically for move, I use it for two things. I'll put a transpose line on it. I'll grab the middle one and move the object around. So if I go to the top here and it's like, you know what, I want the cylinder here, but I want it moved this direction. You can just tap on the object. Now, because we're looking straight down on it, it's really hard to grab that middle circle. So what I'm going to do is just tap on my object and drag. And the cool thing about transpose is it'll actually snap to some verts, and whenever we get into like posing characters and stuff, those will come in handy, but you can kind of treat it as like a bone. But what I can do is tap on my object and drag off, and as soon as I leave the object, it'll stop snapping and it'll just go straight out. And actually, yeah, as long as you're off any object. If you're just out here in space, it'll be a straight line out. If I hold down shift, that'll snap to angle increments. So I can tap on my object, hold down shift, drag it straight this way. And now if I want to move it in this direction, I can hold down shift, grab the middle one, and just move it that direction. So now transpose is one of those courses, one of those classes that is super duper hands-on. You won't, I don't think you'll learn transpose just by watching me do it. You really have to get in there and start fiddling with those three circles and those three inner circles and the medium circle. I'll show you what they do, but don't think you're going to learn it just by watching me do it, because this is something you got to kind of feel. And the more I talk about it, and the more you watch me do it and don't do it yourself, you're going to be like, this is crazy. This doesn't make any sense at all. Like, why would you go through all that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. As soon as you actually start using it, you'll start seeing how beneficial all of these different things can be. So I can scale it non-uniformly. I can go ahead and snap to a side view and just move it down this way. If I want to move it this way, I can tap on my object, hold down shift, and then I can just move it in this direction here. Same thing if I want to move it down, hold down shift. If I don't want to hold down shift and constrain it, I can still be snapped to a side view. And as long as I'm snapped to that side view, I can move it along this entire side plane without ever leaving any other axis. So that's just a very quick way to kind of snap to an axis and just kind of do that. And you can drag on an object. You don't have to hold down shift if you're just going to grab that middle circle. So just kind of drag it out, grab the middle circle and move it. Go to this view, drag it out, middle circle, move it. And it doesn't even, like I just showed you, it doesn't even matter. If you drag this outer circle here, you can move that transpose line anywhere, and it'll still behave how you want when you grab that inner circle. So, again, move brush, where hit W, you can tap on your object once and let go, and it'll find the surface normal. You can tap on your object and drag, and it'll snap to your object until you leave the object and go out here in a blank space, and it turns into a straight line. So then you can hold down shift, make it a straight line from any view. The top circle, with move in this case, will anchor it from the first point here, and it's actually not at the very bottom, it's slightly above the bottom, so it's actually going to move in the Y direction a little bit down here, but mostly up here. So it's going to have a lot of movement on this side and a little movement on this side. If you want to, you can snap it to the bottom by dragging from that bottom vert straight up, off, hold down shift, and now this will be the anchor point. Hold down shift and you can just uniformly scale this in the Y, which is actually move, or move it down. The middle one on move moves the entire object, and the bottom one on move does that clipping thing. So that's basically move. Another cool thing about move is you have these directions right here. So right now when you just tap on an object, it goes like here's the blue line here. It goes straight down the blue line, and then on either side of this you have X and Y. So if you tap these, it'll actually shoot you right in that direction. So if you grab this top one here, and then you can shoot over here to the X, to the Y, or straight down the bone, which is Z in this case. So you can use that to your advantage if you're ever you want to move in this direction maybe, and then say, you know what, I want to move in that direction. You can just do that. As well as, you're going to see this white circle up here. Now when I hover over this white circle, if you go to the very top of the screen, you're going to see some instructions there. So you can click to recenter your transpose is the first one. So if I click this one, it'll center that transpose line, the anchor point, right in the middle of your object. So I can do that, and then I can hit the blue at that point, and that'll be anchored right in the middle of the object and then shooting straight down. So you can use that to scale in the Y direction right from the middle of an object. So you can put your transpose line wherever you want, click the outer white circle, and then click this green circle, and that'll shoot you, it'll put the anchor right at the middle of the object and shoot the other one straight up and down, and you can do that. Same thing in the X, and then same thing in the Z. So use that to your advantage. If I have a transpose line and I hover over the endpoint again, this little white circle, the camera one is control click to restore the camera, so it'll actually flatten it out. So when we get to sculpting, I'll show you guys that one. But for now, if you want to find the middle of an object, just click that white, and then you can click any of these other directionals, and it'll go ahead and center that transpose and then shoot a line straight out the top and straight out the bottom.